Dodrio from Pokemon 151 makes Zoroark VSTAR so much more consistent to the point where Zoroark might just be a top tier contender for the standard format. Dodrio is a stage 1 colorless Pokemon with 100 HP, which keeps you out of range of those Greninja snipes, and it has the ability Zooming Draw, which means that we can place a damage counter on this Pokemon and then draw a card once per turn. That is super strong. It provides some baseline consistency and helps us power up our Zoroark VSTAR's attack. We can also make use of the Ballistic Beak attack in this particular deck. 1 colorless energy, we deal 10 damage plus 30 more for every damage counter on our Dodrio. That means if we have 9 damage counters on our Dodrio, we'll be doing 9 times 30, that's 270 damage, plus 10, 280. That'll knock out every VSTAR in the game. But as I mentioned, the main focal point of the deck will really be Hisuian Zoroark VSTAR. This Pokemon has always threatened to be super strong, but has never quite been good enough in the standard format. It's a 270 HP, colorless stage 1 VSTAR Pokemon. It has the attack Ticking Curse for 2 colorless energy, which deals 50 damage for each of our Pokemon with damage counters on them, hence the beautiful synergy with our Dodrio. And we also have a really strong, consistent VSTAR power, Phantom Star, discard your hand, draw 7 cards. It means that you can effectively play 2 supporters, right? You can play Professor's Research by using Phantom Star, and then play another supporter if you want to. This is going to be our main attacker in the deck that we're playing. We're going to try and power it up and attack with our Dodrio, and there are a couple of other ways we can do that. There's the classic Gengar, which has the ability Netherworld Gate. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is on the discard pile, we can put it on the bench and then put 3 damage counters on it. That gives it a lot of flexibility. We can put 3 damage counters on and then potentially move 2 of those off with our damage pump to move them around onto our other benched Pokemon. That means we can easily get Pokemon that don't have damage counters in that mode so that Zoroark VSTAR can start attacking for big damage, and worst case scenario, we also have Gapejaw Bog, which when it's in play will mean that every Pokemon, both ours and our opponents, will receive 2 damage counters when they enter the field of play. So we're powering up our attacks and also making it easier to knock out our opponents. Ultimately, this deck, which is on the screen and in the description below if you'd like to try it out yourself, is a lot of fun. Let's see if Dodrio can really turn the corner for Zoroark VSTAR and make it one of the best decks in the standard format. Into a game, we're up against one of the most powerful decks in the standard format right now. That is Chen Pao. So we're going to need a pretty solid setup, and to be brutally honest, I think we have managed to do it. We've got 2 Doduo in play, and this last Nest Ball will be able to grab us a Zoroark V, which I really like. We can attach the Psychic Energy to the active or the bench. We'll attach to the active to give us a retreat if we need it next turn, and this is super good for us. We have all of the things that we need to hopefully get a strong turn next turn. The real thing that I'm disappointed about is the fact that we have a damage pump in our hand, which means we won't be able to make a huge amount of use of it just yet. We'll have to get rid of it using Hisuian Zoroark VSTAR's ability. Ultimately, this deck still has a few problems, as Hisuian Zoroark has always had. It's a little bit of a glass cannon. It's very easy to knock out, considering that you need to have each of those Pokemon with some damage counters on them, and it just means that it's easier for everyone to knock out. So that's definitely a concern, but Dodrio is just such a good way of adding consistency to this deck that I think it could potentially become one of those rogue decks that could win a tournament if you take it in the right position. Ultimately though, it is a little bit iffy. Let me know if you like it down in the comments below. As I mentioned, not replying to them anymore, but still reading them, and I've really appreciated all the kind comments that have come my way since I've come back from my extended break. If you didn't know about it, fantastic, doesn't matter, don't worry, just ignore it. But if you did, I really appreciate you coming past. Leave a like for me if you have enjoyed the 151 content so far. I know I put out the challenge for 250 likes on the last video. That didn't happen, so Beedrill is still on the back burner. I actually have the video made. I've got the game, I've got the commentary, it's all done. I'm just waiting until the right time. So if you want to see it, we'll try it again. 250 likes. If we can get 250 likes on this, this, then maybe Beedrill comes tomorrow. Otherwise, there's a ton more 151 content coming your way, as well as a whole bunch of Obsidian's Flame stuff that I just didn't do because I wasn't making videos when that set came out. So I think we should be pretty set all the way through until November when Paradox Rift comes out. That set is going to be very, very strong leading up to the Latin America International Championships. Our opponent has really been having a good time over here. I'm not sure exactly what more they can do this turn. They've used pretty much all their abilities. They've set up their Frigibacks. Now they've attached to their attacker and over to us. So we now are in a very interesting position. Top decking the Manaphy is pretty solid. I don't dislike that. And we'll throw down the Dodrio into the active. It has a 1 retreat cost, so it's not the end of the world. And we'll be able to get ourselves a solid turn here. Now, I don't necessarily think that this is going to be too greedy a play here. We're in a little bit of strife in the sense that we don't have a huge amount of Pokemon with damage counters available. But now that we've used our V-Star power and have 2 Dodrio in play, we can use Zooming Draw to draw 2 cards, place damage counters on those Dodrios, and since we attached the Psychic Energy last turn, we'll be able to retreat into our Hisuian Zoroark V-Star here, attach a double Turbo Energy, and then use Ticking Curse to take a knockout on our opponent's Frigibacks. Now that's super, super strong, as you would know if you have played this Chien-Pao deck before. A Frigibacks being knocked out early is genuinely one of the worst things that can happen. So we're putting ourselves in a position to try and win this game now. We'll wait and see whether or not we are able to pull it off. I'm going to grab another Zoroark with the Ultra Ball here, just because we're holding the V-Star and the double Turbo, so we can attach those next turn. But for the moment, we'll just swing in for our Ticking Curse here. 80 damage, 100 because of the 2 Pokemon that we have damaged on our field. Minus 20 thanks to the double Turbo Energy means that we get the knockout on the Frigibacks. But more importantly, it means that our opponent cannot knock us out this turn and gives us just that little bit more time to try and find the extra damage counters needed to reach into this Chien-Pao. And that's the thing that Dodrio gives you the flexibility to do, right? We can manually power our own attack up. We don't need the Bog. We don't need the Gengar. We don't need the items. All we need is a Dodrio or 2 and we can get there. So let's see how our opponent responds. They have a massive hand here, 12 cards, so you would think that they would be more than capable of getting another Frigibacks down if they want one. They obviously can also set up a card like a Palkia. A Palkia V would be very, very strong here, giving them the flexibility to use their own V-Star power to power up their Chien-Pao. But ultimately, really, the only thing that they could do here is attach and then use Hail Blade for 120 damage, and you almost don't want to do that, right? Because the Chien-Pao, if it damages the Zoroark, will put itself into a position where a single damage pump means that the Chien-Pao gets return KO'd. Putting the damage on the active means that we've got 3 damage Pokemon, and then a damage pump moving 2 of those damage counters off could be catastrophic. So we'll see whether our opponent does it or not. I guess on the plus side, if they do Hail Blade, which it looks like they're doing, then they do incentivize me to not Gus that Frigibacks. So I don't know that we will necessarily worry about that. Instead, we might just choose to Arven and grab the damage pump. But in the meantime, we'll use Zooming Draw and we'll just see what we can find. There's a damage pump off of the Zooming Draw, which is very, very nice. You never know, we might find a boss's orders to simply win the game, but it doesn't look like that is going to be the case. So instead, we can simply use the damage pump that we found. We can move 20 damage off of our active Zoroark onto 1 on the Zoroark on the bench and 1 onto the Manaphy. That will get us the knockout. Now we can choose, do we want to use our Nest Ball here to find an extra Pokemon, or do we just want to use the Professor's Research, thin these cards out of our deck, and hopefully find something else? And look at this, we actually find an Ultra Ball here and can get rid of a Gengar, as well as also the Capturing Aroma. We don't really need that. We can do a couple of things with this, but I really like an extra Doduo here. Since we've got the 3rd Dodrio in deck, we can utilize the extra Dodrio in the next turn and make sure that every single turn that we play from here on out, we always have extra cards. Now, I'm not going to play down the Gapejaw Bog just because I want that Doduo to draw as many cards as possible, and we'll be able to do that next turn thanks to the Ultra Ball that's in our hand. So we'll just go through, we'll take the knockout, we'll take those prizes. We're dealing 250 damage, which is more than enough into a Chen Pao deck. And hopefully our opponent now being 3 prizes behind is going to be just that little bit too difficult for them to catch up from here. Does look like they're going to be able to rare candy into Baxcalibur. They'll be able to accelerate as many energy from their hand to their Pokemon as they like, thanks to that super cold ability. But the Radiant Greninja in the active won't be as powerful as it could have been, thanks to the Manaphy that we have on our bench. That is, of course, unless they have Cross Switcher or Boss and the Cologne. That could potentially be very concerning. The Cologne will turn off Manaphy's ability and allow Greninja to snipe for 90 damage on 2 Pokemon. And if they do that, then they'll be able to knock out both Dodrio or a Doduo and a Dodrio, and that could be really, really bad. We would luckily be able to retreat. If that was the case, we have the energy in hand, but still not a good position to be in. We do now, though, have a very, very strong opportunity to win the game. We can see all of the prizes that we need on the board. When it comes to Pokemon cards, you need to map out your prizes. Where am I going to win the game? We've taken 2 prizes, or 2 attacks for 2 knockouts. We've taken 3 prizes. That means we're going to need to attack at least 2 more times here. Single prize Pokemon, 2 prize Pokemon. Lumineon V is the easiest Pokemon on our opponent's side of the field to knock out. So as long as one of these 2 now, 2 prize Pokemon stays in play, then we have a very, very clear map to try and win this game. Looks like our opponent's just going to go into a retreat here, retreat to the Chen Pao, and take the 2 prize knockout. I think the biggest thing that our opponent can do is try and keep us from having attacking Zoroark VSTARs. Little do they know, we have all of the pieces that we need to set up another Zoroark next turn, but they obviously want to keep us from being able to stream attackers, and that can sometimes be quite difficult. But just imagine, if we were playing this Hisuian Zoroark deck as it was before the release of Pokemon 151, we'd actually be in a really bad position here. We have no draw supporter. We have no way of getting extra cards. We've already used Phantom Star. Because of the Dodrio, the triple Dodrio in the deck means that we've at least got a few extra cards to draw. And like I said, that extra consistency might just be the thing that turns Hisuian Zoroark VSTAR into a genuine meta threat. Like, I'm fairly confident we're going to win this game, and there's not many decks that you can build from 151 that give you that kind of chance. Oh my goodness, their entire hand was energy? I was just sitting here the whole time thinking, well, they must have a completely dead hand. Nope, it's 7 energy cards. Alright, fair enough. So now they've got all the attackers that they need. They'll need to discard 3 energy to get this knockout, I think. They're going to use Hailblade here. You'd presume they're going to Hailblade the energies off of the active. That seems the most likely thing to do. That way that they'll not necessarily lose anything when I knock out the Chen Pao next turn. And to be honest, I think that's what I'm going to have to do. I will be able to guarantee to get that to happen thanks to the Ultra Ball in our hand. We've got the Gapejaw Bog as well if we want to put that down before we bench our 3rd Hisuian Zoroark V. But I think we're in a pretty good spot. Our opponent is going to be grasping at straws here. The only thing that they can really do to slow us down is play Roxanne or Iono next turn. And like I said, if they play Iono and we have a completely dead hand, we've at least got Dodrio to draw some extra cards with. So I do really, really like that. Alright, so our opponent's finally decided that the 3 energy need to come off of the Chen Pao in the active. We can promote our Zoroark VSTAR and get started with our turn. A second Gapejaw Bog is pretty solid. We're going to Ultra Ball away that Gapejaw Bog and also the Psychic Energy to grab out a Dodrio. Just double check here to make sure that we do have 2 Boss's Orders in the deck, just in case things get a little bit difficult. We might gun down now. If we find the boss, we get the Baxcalibur and we win the game, right? So we may as well zooming draw just to double check to see if we can hit it. If we do, it'll be super simple, super easy. If we don't, then we just bench the Zoroark and prepare to attack again next turn. But if we get the chance to completely turn off the game, we may as well. We don't find it, which is fine. We can throw down the Bog and then the Zoroark. This will give us 300 effective damage, which is pretty gosh darn strong. We've got 4 cards in hand. All of them are bad. We may as well play this Jacq to grab ourselves the Gengar. And now our deck, pretty small, realistically. A lot of good cards in here. We do want those boss's orders, potentially. Although, to be fair, once we've taken our knockout here, which we're going to do, 280 damage is a lot of damage, then we're in a position where pretty much anything that our opponent throws into the active is going to be knocked out next turn. Now, the biggest thing, the worst thing that could happen to us here is that we get knocked out and Iono'd to 1. Now, I mentioned before, we're obviously not in a position where it's going to completely ruin our ability to play the game. But it does mean that we would need to find a Hisuian Zoroark VSTAR next turn. Not necessarily a huge problem until you look at the fact that all of our cards for searching out Zoroark are currently in our hand. So if we get Iono'd, that could be a concern. In saying that, though, we do have 3 pseudo-attackers on our bench. We could potentially use Dodrio, and obviously that attack down the bottom, what is it, Ballistic Rush, to potentially take a knockout, depending, of course, on what our opponent does. I'm curious to see whether or not we can get it to happen. It looks like our opponent is just going to use Chien-Pao to get a KO. Now, I'll promote the Zoroark for sure, even if we do get Iono'd, and then hopefully we go from there. But ultimately, I'm thinking like laterally, out to the side, just in case we do get Iono'd, because if we do, that would be bad. And in saying that, they've just played Irida, so we don't need to worry about it. What we could do, though, is we could potentially go looking for an energy, see if we can't find one, you know, just to spice things up and make it a little bit interesting, or we could just play down the Zoroark and win. Both options are, of course, acceptable, so that will be more than okay from my perspective. My opponent plays down another Frigibax here, obviously afraid that their Frigibax will be, or their Arctibax, Baxcalibur, will be knocked out. If that happens, I win, so you don't need to worry about the extra Frigibax here, because the game will be over before that Frigibax becomes relevant. Maybe best not to bench it, but that's okay. And then you'd presume that they're going to retreat into Chien-Pao and attack. Looks like they've got some energy to discard still with concealed cards, but they'll be able to retreat and search out some energies and then go from there. We'll see whether that is what they choose to do, and it is, because of course. And then they'll go for the Hellblade for the knockout. So once that knockout has happened, we get to choose whether to be a good person or a bad person. Now, personally, I like being a good person 99% of the time. We'll just have to wait and see whether I decide to be a good person this time. I kind of want to know whether we would have got the knockout if they'd Iono'd us. But we'll never truly know. If we were testing in real life, we could do that, but Pokemon TCG Live does not have the functionality of real life. It barely has the functionality of a Pokemon trading card game simulator, so that was unnecessarily harsh. I really shouldn't have dived into the controversy of Pokemon TCG Live. Here comes the attack. They're going to Hailblade knock out the Zoroark. That's going to be A-okay by me. And then we figure out what to do from there. And I need to figure out what to do if we don't get the 250 likes that we need for Beedrill, because I'd love to show you Beedrill. In fact, the game's really good. I actually really like the game. So yeah, if you want to see it, leave a like here. Otherwise, just generally leave a like or a comment. Let's drop like an emoji or something. I don't know, whatever it is you feel like. Let's zooming draw. Let's see what we can find. See whether we would have got ourselves an energy or a pump or something like that we could have used to attack with a Dodrio. I don't know whether we would have or not. Let's find out. There's a switch card. Let's zooming draw. We can just pretend here like we haven't got the Zoroark VSTAR. We would have got a research. We can play down the Zoroark, and then I think we just win the game, right? There's no point. There's no point stuffing around trying to get all the perfect numbers in the right place. I think we could have done it, but we may as well just show off the fact that those Dodrios make this deck so much more consistent. The only problem is 151 is kind of hard to come across. So if you can find a 4-3 line, then hey, you deserve to play it. Thanks very much everyone for watching. Obviously, like usual, I appreciate you coming past. If you like the list, it's in the description. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you next time for more from the Sableyes. Bye.